Good afternoon, everybody. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we're a few minutes after 2 o'clock, but trying to let everyone get signed up and some members to get here, get some things passed out. But do appreciate you being here. I don't think a lot of us anticipated we'd have this opportunity to be back here at the Capitol in December, but here we are. Speaker Burns has tasked us, while we know that the main point of business while we're up here is to take care of the redistricting special session. He wants the committees to work as much as possible to get a jump start on January, and that's what we're going to do. I appreciate Chairman Parsons for giving me the opportunity to work on this issue and to have this meeting today to assemble this group, and appreciate the members who have been willing to dedicate their time on this issue. Before we get started, Representative Barton, would you open us up in prayer?
Everyone bow your head. Heavenly Father, be with us today as we learn more issues for the state of Georgia, and we can do great things for our citizens. In your name we pray. Amen.
We got a number of people who are signed up to speak today. The issue is one that's important to Georgia, and glad to have the opportunity to work on it. I appreciate Chairman Shaw Blackman for enlisting me on this endeavor and for all the work he's put in. We're going to be working off a committee substitute that we actually finalized towards the end of this session, this previous session. Just for everyone's information, it's LC 510360S. It's a joint effort of conversations we've been having, as well as some valuable insight I got from our PSC chairman and former Representative Jason Shaw, based on a model that they're working out in Texas that's working very well. And I think I'm just going to jump right into the discussion. And if our chairman, who's with us today, I know he's done a lot of work on this issue over at the PSC, and so just give him the opportunity to say a few words to us. And so, Chairman Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where would you like me?
You can sit right there, wherever you want. As a former member, you can come here and sit next to me, as far as I'm concerned.
One thing I did learn around here was to stay out of y'all's way and only call when asked, so I appreciate the call. It's good to be with y'all, good to be with you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue the discussion. I know I've talked with a lot of y'all about this issue, and I'll just start out by saying how I got involved in this issue, because there's a pretty good backstory. My first few weeks on the commission, so this would have been in the early part of January of 19, our friend Jay Powell called me. And y'all know what kind of an outside-the-box thinker he was. He said, I want to work with you, and I want to work on solar decommissioning. Well, y'all know, he was rules chairman at the time, so he had a lot going on. But this was a passionate issue of his, just like we've talked about. So I think it's, he's smiling down knowing that we're still trying to work on this, knowing that if he had been here, he'd have fixed this years ago.
That's exactly what he'd remind us of, too.
But that's how I got started, so it's good to continue that conversation. I also want to thank y'all for basically being proactive, because this is not necessarily an issue that we're having a problem with today, but we're looking at this just like Jay Powell did and thinking 20 years out, because eventually this could become an issue. And we've always done a good job in this state of trying to protect our private property owners and our landowners, and that's what this bill, this attempt is trying to do, to protect those people. We know that a lot of our ag community have benefited from solar by the additional revenue they've been able to generate from their farms. There's also a lot of folks out there that don't share that love for solar, if you will. It's one of those things where if you benefited from it, it's good. If you haven't, but at the end of the day, what's happening in our state and the tremendous growth that we're seeing in Georgia, that's a direct result of the policies that you all have put into place, and why we're continue to be the #1 state for business, and the amazing growth that we saw over this last year and a half in our state is definitely, we're having some growing pains from a generation standpoint. Y'all have read what's going on. We've got a generation case coming up. But a lot of these companies that y'all help recruit and that are coming here, they're asking for renewable power. And so our utilities, whether it's the EMCs or the investor-owned utilities or the municipals, they're trying to answer, just like when I'm in my insurance agency, I want to try to have a product that my customers need and what they want. Well, that's the same thing our utilities. They want to have a product that their customers, in this case, are demanding. And so that's one of the things that's driven the amount of solar that you've seen in our state. And so I appreciate y'all kind of taking a breather on this issue and letting all this different stakeholders weigh in, because there's a lot of different folks that are affected by this. But the Texas model that we spoke about, to me, that's been the best model, because I've been asking around other colleagues from other states what they've done. I think what's unique about the Texas model is that it basically protects the landowner's ability, but it also protects the ability for private landowners and private companies to work out their own agreements necessarily without the big government telling everybody what they can or can't do. It's got the financial assurance guarantees that protect the landowners. Financial assurance could be a bonding mechanism, a letter of credit, whatever it takes to work out that agreement between the landowner and the solar company. But it also, that model also takes into account the salvage value of that equipment, because there is a pretty high salvage value, and there's still a lot of work being done in terms of technologies and more work being done on making sure that there is a lot of recyclable value in the panels, the inverters, and the frames, and everything else that's a part of that. So it's very important that we take that salvage value into account, because that, if it's a bonding mechanism being used for the financial assurance, then you're able to buy down the carrying cost of that bond, because these are mostly 30 and sometimes 40-year agreements. You know, it used to be the first solar agreements were 20 years, then they're 30, and now we're starting to see 40-year agreements. So that's probably about the average life cycle of most of this equipment before it needs major updates and so forth. There's a lot of folks from the solar industry that can speak a lot more fluently than me about all that and that technical information, but there is a lot of salvage value. The important reason for being able to take that into account is because the more you can buy down the carrying cost of these bonds, inevitably you're protecting the ratepayers, because the more you add cost to these projects, because I'm just going to use the Georgia Power side that we have a lot to do with, working with Georgia Power on the setup. Georgia is one of the top, you know, I think, Brad, are we number 7 state for solar? So we're not the best, we're not the worst, we're somewhere better than middle, which is usually a pretty good spot to be. But we've done that with no mandates. Even our friends in North Carolina have mandated this. We've done it with no mandates. It's all competitive bid on the Georgia Power side. And so the more you can keep that product competitive, the better you're protecting the ratepayers. And so that's one of the things that's really a concern to me, is that as we do this, we make sure we get it right, because at the end of the day, we don't want to add more cost than we need to, because it's the ratepayers who are going to end up paying that. Now, the EMC side and their agreement, they're doing a lot of this utility scale solar with their partnership with Silicon Ranch. That's a different model where you really don't have this issue, because in most of those cases, and I'll let them speak on it, but I remember watching the hearing that y'all had last year on this when Tom Harrell spoke on it, and he told y'all that most of their projects, if not all, they're actually buying the land and not leasing it. So you don't really have the landowner left over that you're trying to make sure you protect their land and making sure. But this model, this Texas model that I've showed you, has all that financial assurance. It ensures that the land is left in the same condition that it was prior, so the landowner's protected there. It also makes sure that here's what you're seeing a lot of in these projects. You'll have a developer that'll come in and develop the project. If they're successful in winning a PPA and beating everybody else out, then many times these contracts are then sold off to another company. Well, this language in the Texas model also ensures that that same financial assurance is transferred to whoever the new owner is. In most cases, these are pretty lucrative contracts. So the chance of you having stranded assets out there in the form of a solar farm is pretty slim, because if the owner has some changes or gets in trouble and has to sell it off, there's usually somebody just waiting in line to buy that contract and get that PPA and get that monthly income. But that's really it. I could go on and talk more about solar in general, but I'm pretty proud of where we are, because we've been able to, like I said, been able to grow this market without mandates, truly competitive bid. It's benefited our state because we've been able to lure companies here that wanted renewable power. But I will say this, we are seeing somewhat of a transition now because the fact is that most states don't have the capacity to support near the kind of growth that we're seeing in Georgia now. And a lot of the companies that are coming here now are coming here not necessarily, I'm going to use data centers as an example, because a lot of the growth we're seeing as far as the load factors that our utilities are dealing with now is a direct result of the load growth attributed to these massive data centers. And I'm not here to say that these are good or bad or whatever. It's economic development, and Georgia has positioned ourselves to take advantage of that. I think we're the top 3 state now for data centers with a lot in the pipeline. But a lot of these folks coming here now, they're not necessarily saying we've got to have renewable power. Other states have shut the door on them and said we don't have the capacity. We got Vogtle 3 and 4 sitting here, and that's a prime example why we do have the capacity now. But they're needing power. They're not, the transition I'm referring to is they're coming here because they're not necessarily saying you got to go to South Georgia and build a 1,500-acre solar farm or we're not coming. They're saying we got to have power, and we're going to come where whoever's got it. And that's why they're coming here. So I'll be glad to entertain any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always great to have you with us, and appreciate all the diligent efforts that y'all are making over at the PSC to help us as a partnership in the state for economic development, growth, and protecting our ratepayers, which we all care so much for. We have any questions for Chairman Shaw?
All right.
Perfect job.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
so
y'all.
much.
Now we'll let the experts come up.
First, I'm going to have Steve Shirello with Inman Solar.
Good afternoon. I imagine I just jump right into it here, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chairman, for having me out. And I don't really have a lot of prepared statements other than to sort of support the effort in general and to be a resource as needed, both to the Public Service Commission and Chairman Shaw and this group as you go through the effort. I can just speak to my experience in the industry, which dates to 2008, essentially the start of the industry in the state, both as a employee of one of the first solar companies in Georgia, and then as a founder of a company that grew with the industry, and ultimately we've built solar farms, I don't know the exact number, but probably 40 or 50 counties in the state, working at all levels, both municipalities, municipal users, as well as mostly Georgia Power projects throughout the state. So, and then working with these landowners to develop these contracts and dealing with all the issues, including the question of decommissioning. As Chairman Shaw pointed out, I'm actually one of those developers who gets in the middle of these things, and then we get all the power purchase agreement and the contract with the landowners and the entitlements, and then we actually build the project, and we turn over operating projects to owner-operators. So this investment community, which generally is subsidiaries of large utilities, sometimes investor-owned entities, but I think the most important thing about that process is that we're sort of the boots on the ground that run around and do all the things and build the projects and get these projects done, and they tend to be more focused on the financial efficiencies that are necessary to make these projects happen, because they are very lean deals, and which is part of what it, but I think the structure here in Georgia has always been very attractive because they are long-term deals. This is a good place to do business, and this is there's sort of simple structures. So I think the point about not making this overly complicated and burdensome to the investor is important, but at the same time we recognize the need to protect landowners. I would say of the deals we've done, again 40 or 50 of them at least, probably 10 or 20% of them had some sort of a bond included in them for decommissioning, and I think that is the preferred mechanism of the community. A lot of places in the country already have these. There are bonding underwriters that are willing to take on this risk, and that becomes a relationship between that underwriter and the entity that they are ultimately backstopping, right? So in a bond scenario, you have a AAA rated agency that's willing to underwrite the removal at some point, and it generally is written as a annually renewing bond, and it adds to the cost of the project, but it's not on the grand scale of things, it's not a significant cost. So it seems to be a good solution that would protect things. I will also point out that there are a lot of counties around the state that have included that in their ordinances, that there would be a removal bond, so it doesn't substantially impact the ability to work in those counties. It's just, and then of course some landowners get into negotiating these things. My experience is that once they understand who the underlying investors are and the quality of those entities, that they usually, it answers their concerns. These are not fly-by-night operations. They're putting up big money with long, slow paybacks, and they are, everyone's, once they sort of understand the players, can get comfortable. But that's really all I have, and I'm happy to support the process however I can, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Mr. Shirella, thank you for being with us. Do you offhand have an idea, percentage-wise, how many counties you think have that bonding requirement?
I would guess, I was thinking about it as I was sitting here, and I probably could have figured it out better, but I can only think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head that have had that. I know Lee County has one. I want to say Burke and Thomas County have it, but I don't know. Again, that was just my recollection, but I would guess it's probably 8 or 10 around the state, not much more than that.
You have a question from Chair Lady Camp.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. My question is, you mentioned it's mostly an annual renewable bond scenario.
Yep.
Do you have any cost basis for 10 acres or 100 acres? How much it would cost to have that type bond annually?
It's in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. So I can say that. So I don't know. Obviously, it would depend on the size of the bond and the size of the system. 10 acres is sort of a 3 to 4 megawatt system. So that's the space that we've operated in, and that would be in that range. If you were getting into sort of the 100 to 200 megawatt project, that's probably another. I would probably say order of magnitude larger, but I don't think it would necessarily be, it's call it 50 times bigger, but it's not 50 times more expensive. It's probably 10 times more expensive. Okay. But that's a little bit of a guesstimate on my part. Call it an educated guess.
Can
maybe.
I follow up?
Of course.
A second question: if being what you do in your industry and you're facilitating these projects, would a county having a bond requirement prohibit you from doing business in that county?
No.
Or would that deter you to look elsewhere?
No, I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, but a good site near infrastructure is substantially more valuable to the process than sort of that requirement. So, I was 100% would say that it's not. In my experience, that would not be a deterrent to going into a county.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Mr. Shirello? Don't see any. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Now we'll call up Wilson Mallard with Georgia Power.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Chairman Parsons. Appreciate the opportunity to be with y'all today. My name's Wilson Mallard. I'm the Director of Renewable Development at Georgia Power Company. I'm representing a team of folks that's responsible for planning and procuring renewable energy on behalf of our customers. We do that as part of our planning process, the integrated resource planning process that's really the underpinning of which the legislative body supports through the IRP Act and the Territorial Act, and then through that IRP process every 3 years in front of the commission, in which the Public Service Commission and lots of stakeholders are able to provide input and ultimately settle on what that plan is. That plan is to provide our customers with the best mix of cost and reliability, and that's where all of our solar and renewable growth comes from. We absolutely support that continued solar and renewable growth. Chairman Shaw mentioned a lot of the economic growth in Georgia is driven by the fact that we do have really good energy market here, and we are growing solar in a way that benefits all customers. So the truth is, the Georgia market is really strong. Other states look to our market as a way to mimic that. It's really successful, and it really does take all parties. So as we go through time and get more and more solar on the ground, rightly so, there's more focus on where we're siting the solar and what the impacts are. And so I will say that Georgia Power, we do agree with the intent of the bill as stated in this committee on March 14th, I think. Really, all solar developers should be good stewards of the natural resources of Georgia and should take care of the land where solar facilities are located. We're supportive of the concept as it was put forward to, require that lessee and the lessor to have that agreement to sort of ensure that at the end of life, the facility will be properly decommissioned and deconstructed. Now, I'll tell you, I think a lot of these facilities are going to end up being repowered. They're sitting on a piece of ground that already has solar on it. There's an interconnection to the grid. I think there's a high likelihood going forward that as technology advances, a lot of these facilities will end up being repowered, become more efficient, provide more energy to the grid. But if not, having an obligation there and having funds available and an obligation through whatever means that is, a bond or a letter of credit or a guarantee, is a good thing and a good thing to have between, again, the solar developer, the owner of the property, and as they make that deal, that being between them is the right way to go about it. Georgia Power, we take significant care in the solar projects that we're involved with to make sure that all environmental impacts are considered and mitigated, and especially sort of end of life, what's going to happen at the end. How are we going to decommission? How are we going to mitigate? How are we going to return that property back to the way it was? About 90% of the renewables we procure are through purchase power agreements, through that competitive RFP process that Chairman Shaw talked about. And so I thought I'd share just a snippet of some of the language that we have in our current RFPs, and this is how we compel these counterparts to do the right thing, if you will. And so I'll paraphrase here, but the bidder hereby represents, warrants, and covenants that they're familiar with all the applicable federal, state, and local environmental regulations and laws, and then I'll skip to the end, and with respect to the design, construction, ownership, operation, maintenance, and decommissioning of the facility. So even though Georgia Power doesn't own these facilities, we just buy the output, our counterparts are obligated through these strong language in these purchase power agreements to have a plan in place. And listen, most of these folks do that. They have a plan in place to do the right thing and to have those funds available at the end. I can also tell you that for Georgia Power self-build projects, and as an example, these would be solar projects at military bases, we incur an asset retirement obligation, really required for utility accounting, but that means we're setting the money aside to make sure that at the end of the useful life of the asset, we can decommission that facility as required. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all. We look forward to being a resource to this committee. Happy to answer any questions, and again, just appreciate the opportunity to participate.
I appreciate the good partnership that Georgia Power has with the state and the ratepayers, and sounds like a lot of the issues we're trying to address y'all may have already covered in some of your agreements, so I appreciate y'all being forward looking there. Any questions for Mr. Mallard? Well, Mr. Mallard, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We'll bring up Steve Butler with Georgia SEA. Oh, he stepped out. We'll get him when he comes back. Kathleen Bowen with Silicon Ranch. That's fine.
Good afternoon, Kathleen Bowen with Impact Public Affairs, and we are honored to represent Silicon Ranch, and we appreciate the opportunity to bring them here to get a snapshot of what they are doing in the state. You do have in your packet a map of their locations and then some details on the investments they've made in the state, and I will turn it over now to Ben Oberman.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I appreciate you guys having us here today. My name is Ben Oberman. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Silicon Ranch. Mr. Commissioner Shaw kind of laid the outline for us, a little bit of our company, but I'll go through a little bit of it. While our company is headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee, I am a proud Georgia native. I live here in Roswell. I was born and raised here, and prior to joining Silicon Ranch, I spent 14 years with the Georgia Electric Co-ops. While Silicon Ranch has a national footprint, the company pioneered and remains a leader in responsible solar development in Georgia, and over the past decade has invested over $2 billion across the state with plans to invest even more in years to come. As the committee considers the HB 300 or the substitute bill has been discussed, we welcome the opportunity to work with you to answer questions about our business model, our long-term ownership, approach to responsible project development and land stewardship, the future of the industry, how utility-scale solar can play a beneficial role for the transmission grid, and how Georgia's diversified energy portfolio plays a critical role in supporting the state's competitive economic development landscape. As Commissioner Shaw highlighted, unlike most in our industry who lease their property, we own the underlying real estate, which we believe underscores the long-term commitment to both the land and communities that we develop in. And we have quite a few projects in Jeff Davis County, which we're certainly proud of. So as you decide to move forward with the bill, we recommend that exempt projects which the underlying land is owned by the company that is building, owning, and operating the project. As mentioned, there has been similar bills that have been enacted in Texas as well as in Tennessee, and we recommend the consistent approach. As a company that's continuing to invest heavily in the state of Georgia, we appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective, and thank you in advance for your time and willingness to engage on this important issue, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask, of the projects y'all have you had any yet at this point where you've actually gone through a decommissioning process?
We have not at this point, but we are actively engaged and have partnered with a company called Solar Cycle. This company, which is actually looking to potentially open up a new facility here in Georgia, has designed and created the ability to decommission roughly 95% of the materials out of the solar panels themselves. So as we get to the end of life, and as Wilson mentioned, from the repowering perspective, as we take the holistic approach from an ownership perspective to say, at the end of the 20, 30, 40 life, that we as the owners will maintain that ownership and find repowering capabilities to continue to power the EMCs, the co-ops, and Georgia Power as well. So as we look at, from a decommissioning perspective, it's not necessarily a site that we would decommission as long-term owners and operators, it's the materials themselves. So as we decommission the materials themselves, we would repurpose that through some partnerships that we've created with Solar Cycles and others, and we would purchase new equipment, to be more modern and up-to-date to continue to supply power to our partners.
I guess what I'm trying to think, and this isn't just you guys, but all the entities that do these things, they have more and more experience in putting these things in, but they don't have any experience in decommissioning them yet.
Yeah, no, you are correct. And no, to answer your question, we have not had a decommission a project yet. Obviously we probably will not face that for another 15 to 20 years as most of the projects, specifically here in the state of Georgia, were built within the last 10 years, and a lot of these have 20, 30, 40-year life cycles on them. So it's not an issue that we expect to have to make today from a full project perspective, but again, it's more of the materials to ensure that these materials that we have to recycle don't end up in landfills, as I know that's been a very popular question.
Just one more question for me, Chairman.
Of course, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just wondering, and I guess there would be this, but I mean, do you have and here again, it's not necessarily direct to y'all, but I mean, these entities, did they have, and this would be you, but do you have a plan in place? I mean, it seemed like 7, 20, 30, 40 years away, it'd be easy to think, well, we'll take care of that when the time comes.
Right.
I mean, is there a structured plan in place?
Sure.
That y'all have that when, when this happens, this is the process we'll go through?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we do. I am not the qualified individual at Silicon Ranch to talk through what that plan is, but I'm happy to pull together some materials to share that with you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank y'all for being here. All right, now let's go to Steve Butler with Georgia SEIA.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Parsons, Chairman Shaw, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak today, and members of the working committee. I'm very sorry I had to step out for 15 seconds there for a minute, so I apologize for the delay. To reiterate some of what Chairman Shaw said, Georgia's done very well with solar overall. We are 7th now. I think 2024, with what you got coming online, will be 6th according to the SEIA numbers. We appreciate the policies that have been put forward by this body and the PSC in helping the industry come to that level. As community solar providers, we're in roughly about 80 counties in Georgia. We're the 1 to 10 megawatt projects you see, a little bit smaller in scale, but obviously having a big impact on decommissioning and other things. You heard Steve from Inman talk about their projects earlier. They're one of our members and probably could provide the best overall expertise on this. But we do appreciate the efforts of the committee to take care of the landowners. They're our best partners in this endeavor. We're here to answer any questions, and we do support the Texas and Tennessee models that have come forward. We want to make sure that our members are open to you, so I'll probably send an email to all your offices, and if you have any follow-up questions, we'll be happy to answer them. But overall, we just want to thank Chairman Shaw. Georgia's become a leader in solar, and in particular conservative solar policy. To his point, I think we're the only one in the top 25 that's not under the RPS standards. So thank you as a committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Got a question from Chairman Werkheiser.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Kind of broadly, and Chairman Shaw alluded to this, us moving up the rank. Can you give me one broad stroke of what an item that would make Georgia better than a competing state, and one item that would make us make a potential investor go somewhere else? So I guess I'm asking for one good point and one bad point, comparing Georgia to other states.
Overall, the market here has been very good, or you wouldn't have my members that have headquarters here in Georgia. There probably needs to be a continuation of some of the programs that we have currently and updated, because some of these policies were put in place 4 or 5 years ago, or in case of some of the IRPs, they've been decided for projects for the utilities. There could be more opportunities for some of the independent businesses to operate in these spaces, and in particular community solar. They have projects already that have been successful across the state. Generally, the market's very good here. The companies have enjoyed doing businesses, and they've had successful projects with the utilities. There's always slight improvements that we could make to improve markets. I think that's in any industry. And I think you'll be seeing some of that come forward. I know Chairman Shaw's been a leader on this at the PSC, and they've been working on issues to improve the solar market. But I do think that it's a very good market, but of course there could be improvements.
Any other questions? Steve, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Parsons, and Chairman Shaw. Appreciate you.
All right, next I'm going to bring up Jeff Pratt with Green Power EMC. Mr. Pratt, thank you for being here with us.
It's a pleasure, Chairman. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Members of the committee, Chairman Parsons, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about this bill. So first, I'm Jeff Pratt with Green Power EMC, president of that organization. It's been around 22 years this year, and it's was put in place by the electric cooperatives before renewable energy was really very popular in the state of Georgia, largely to educate their own staffs and those of their constituents, which is their member customers, to learn more about renewable energy as it takes place. Solar was not a popular topic 21 years ago. It was landfill gas, which is still popular, and biowood waste and things like that. But in the last 10 years, solar has become increasingly important for a lot of reasons. One of you asked a moment ago why Georgia. There's a lot of good sun in Georgia. It's not the Southwest, but it's a good sunshine state. It's a friendly place to do business in general. So all those pieces makes it a very interesting and good place to do business for solar energy. I had a couple of thoughts that I wanted to give you on solar in general and how it relates to this bill. And really, it revolves around the topic of that many of the speakers have said before, but I want to reiterate it. No mandates in Georgia for renewable energy, and yet we're doing quite well. I must tell you that it's not our goal to be a ranking solar state in the country. It's fine if we do, but we do enter into solar projects because they're economic and provide affordable and can help provide reliable electricity to our customers and members, which as a not-for-profit organization, that's the real purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. We found that given the growth, the really prosperity that this state has seen over the last few years, that increased amounts of energy are going to be required to serve that. And are the choices that we have to serve that new energy requirements are smaller than they were 20 years ago. So what are our choices today? You know, we have some coal, and I suspect we'll keep some coal, given the high what it provides toward reliability and in the state. Natural gas is going to continue for quite some time. Solar energy will have to continue to grow as well to help fill in the gaps that are required by a lot of the energy requirements in the state. It's very important that we take a look at all these energy strategies and position them for success in a way that helps continue to fuel the economic prosperity we have in the state. And so when I think of the bill that you have in front of you, the bill that you're considering, the new language, for example, I think you're going down the right path of providing a very thoughtful piece of legislation if you decide it's needed, because what it does is it doesn't necessarily become a over arduous burden on energy sources that we need that I mentioned earlier, but it also creates some possible accountability, especially for those entities that will not own the land in long term. So that's a very important piece to consider. I'd like to close with just noting that as you move forward in this deliberation and discussion, really think about, I'd ask you to think about the big picture of where all this fits as the state continues to grow and require renewable energy in a way that really fuels and keeps energy in place, keeps the affordable energy in place, and really reliable energy in place to help meet the economic growth of the state. A lot of challenges are going to keep coming, and I really applaud the foresight that you have to talk about this issue some 20-odd years before we probably start significant decommissioning. I'll say that in the decommissioning process, these sites are going to be used for three things. Number one, Going forward, they're either going to be converted back to farmland, timberland, or other agriculture options, and they will be better than ever before because they've lied fallow, and some of the entities are doing a great job of engaging and making that land more valuable for farming in the future. It's never going to go away. Second is repowering them, as some of the other entities said. And third, of course, other commercial interests would be available as well. So one of the least invasive ways to use land, but it also creates huge opportunities for the future as we move forward. So that's concludes my remarks, Chairman.
Thank you for that overview, and thank you for Green Power EMCs and the EMCs all across our state for what they do, servicing a large part of our rural community here across our state. Do we have any questions for Mr. Pratt? All right. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Somewhat germane to the bill here, but I was just curious, do you have you mentioned the term affordable cost for renewable energy. For solar specifically, do you have an idea of what a cost maybe per kilowatt hour is for solar power versus more like a conventional combined cycle, or it doesn't really matter, versus conventional, just what's that offset?
So I'll caution you that that's a difficult comparison because of the nature of the way the energy is produced and what have you. But in general, today, round numbers, maybe 55 cents a kilowatt hour for renewables, and depending on your other alternatives, something similar to that, maybe much higher depending on how much capital cost it takes to fuel it. So renewable energy continues to be cost effective in the market, but I'll tell you that you have to augment and understand there's also the intermittency with those entities. We will need to augment those with batteries and other items to make them look and feel more like a traditional generating machine. So as we move forward and continue to grow those 5 cents a kilowatt hour, the effective cost may be a bit higher, but right now it's very complementary with other sources.
Well, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna follow up.
Of course.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is I'm trying to get some type of an apples to apples comparison of what is this being sold back to the end user, right? Obviously, if you're producing power, you're selling it to a grid. There's that cost markup, and that has to get passed along to the consumer at some point. So if I can buy something conventional at 30 cents or 3 cents a kilowatt hour versus 5 cents, I know it's kind of a loaded question, so it's not really necessarily fair, but it would be nice if someone could give me a straight answer on what that actually is, and it doesn't have to be today, but I appreciate the follow-up.
I will follow up with you. It's not a quick answer,
No.
Unfortunately, but in general, what you have to think about is a portfolio of resources, and that portfolio, if you can add lower cost resources as you go along, especially with growth, it reduces the cost of the portfolio of resources, which reduces the cost of the ultimate energy you sell to a customer. Poles and wires are all the same. They're going to be there. We're going to continue to add those. It really is. We're talking about the difference in fuel cost and capital cost, and any other machinery that it takes to make that a reliable power source. So I'd be glad to follow up with you on that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Parsons.
Yes, Chairman. You may have answered this question when I was pondering how I would ask my question. But my first question is, and I guess it's kind of a dumb question, but I assume that, one of your projects, and I'm thinking of that one down in, I think it was your project down toward Monticello a few years ago. We got the caps that had the goat on it. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I still have that cap. It's one of my favorite caps. But when that comes due for recommissioning, I'm assuming that the reason it would be not recommissioned but decommissioned, I'm assuming the reason it would be decommissioned, or any of these for that matter, would be that the panels are no longer, or they're coming to a point where they're no longer useful or can provide the amount of electricity that they had before, or some percentage of it. So I'm assuming that at that point that you would decommission that one down there, for example, would be that the cost of new panels, the cost of that would exceed the possibility to make a profit on it. Is that correct? I mean, I'm trying to think why you would even decommission one of these things.
You know, the equipment will need to be replaced at some point because it will wear out, even though 30 or 40 years is a long time to think
Right.
forward in the future. But, Chairman, the real issue is on that property for a business decision is can I provide and continue providing a service from that facility that is economic by repowering, you know, taking the old modules out and putting in new ones, for example, that are more efficient as technology changes, or is there a better use for that land and going forward? If the better use of that land is if we need to use it again for agriculture, I mean, I'm talking row crops at that point in time. If it's important, it may be important today, but those landowners have to make those decisions as to what is the greatest return on their investment on the business side, and then from a quality of life side, they have to decide what do they want their land to be used for as well. But going forward, I view those same decisions are going to be made 30 years from now when a lease is done with property. It's same economics, just a different time in the world when those economic factors will come into play.
Well, that answers that question. Thank you. I do
Sure.
have another one, if I may.
Of course, Mr. Chairman.
And that is, when these things are decommissioned and you do something with the equipment there, and I'm thinking about the panels in particular, they would go to somebody, I would assume, some company that would recycle the equipment, the electronics out of them that can be used again. Is that correct? So I guess my question is there any model? I mean, so there's an expense to, there is an expense to decommissioning. I'm just wondering how much, and you probably couldn't answer this, but I'm wondering in general how much of that cost could be borne by the revenue that is brought in by the selling off and the recycling of that equipment that you're getting rid of.
I'll have to tell you, if you were doing this today, you're probably not going to make money on the recycled parts today. But the fact is, I'm going to say it this way, I can't imagine a world when these will go in landfills. Okay, that just does not make sense to me personally. I think that part of the cost of doing business here will be to recycle these facilities in a meaningful way. And what's really good about this is most of these facilities, most of this equipment, most of these panels, it's virtually glass and silicon, which are fairly inert or very inert equipment. And there are processes that are being developed today in the state and worldwide. So the models we will look to will be, where are the oldest solar facilities in the world today at mass? And it's probably going to be Germany and other countries. And as they develop these technologies, we will, of course, do our best and adopt them and develop our own that may be even better, put some American ingenuity into it. So,
If I may, it leads me to my last question, I believe, and that is, isn't it true, I'll say, isn't it true, that at least part of the expense of decommissioning, at least some part of it would be offset by the selling off and for recycling of some of the material in the
absolutely. It's the same with any recycled material today. It's not there's value in that, and it will offset. And over time, I'll give you an example. One of the facilities is glass, right? So glass is on the front and sometimes on the back of solar panels. And it's a huge piece of glass. It's not unlike windshield glass in a car. You don't want to ship that from California to Georgia to manufacture solar panels. You want that glass to be manufactured locally. So one thing you might do, and we will do, is take the recycled glass and create new glass locally with new business, new industry, and put those back into solar panels like at Q-Cells in Northwest Georgia, where those panels are going to be produced. You do not want to ship that in from a foreign country. It's just too heavy, too big, and so that will certainly happen. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, appreciate it.
Mr. Pratt, I don't see any other questions. I appreciate you being part of the discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
All right. Next, we got Brad Carver with Advanced Power Alliance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Shaw. Brad Carver on behalf of the Advanced Power Alliance. Pleasure to be before this committee again and appreciate your very thoughtful discussions and thinking about this industry. I've been representing the utility scale industry for 8 years now, since 2015, and I have seen this growth that's happened. Again, it's because of the way the state has done business. We have called this approach, we coined it Red State Solar for a particular reason, and that's because of the measured approach that the Public Service Commission has taken under the leadership of the commissioners in the state. So I am proud to see the cooperation we have seen between the legislative branch and the executive branch on this issue, because it really is three corners. Your legislative policies in the state, it is the policies that are set by the Public Service Commission, and the efforts of our economic development agencies to recruit businesses here. And one of the main reasons that we have seen such explosive growth is because that is what the customers are demanding. And the good news is that Georgia was able to take the technologies that have happened, starting in Germany, and certainly in some of our states where we have seen the mandates, like California and New Jersey and other states that have mandated renewable energy. In the Southeast, in particular, the state of North Carolina took that approach. So Georgia has accomplished all of this without mandates and without subsidies, because there's been consumer demand for it. You have allowed capitalism and the private sector to work in this state, and so we are here on behalf of the association to applaud that measured approach. Commissioner Bo McDonald, another commissioner that spent 20 years here in the General Assembly, has also commented that we've never had to back up with our renewable energy development in Georgia, and that's a very good and positive thing. So I just want to encourage you. We also, the Advanced Power Alliance, worked on those efforts in the state of Texas, and so we do support that concept as a way to accomplish this, your goals through this study committee. And I'd like to also just comment that I was actually with Chairman Shaw when Chairman Powell had that meeting of the Rural Caucus where we had those initial discussions. And I applaud our late representative for his efforts to think down the road what we need to do through these decommissioning efforts. Because we really have seen this tremendous growth over the last 10 years. A decade ago, the state of Georgia was ranked number 34. Today we're number 7, we'll be number 6, and we probably will be number 5 with what we are seeing, particularly with the Georgia Power Plan through the IRP process. So, but it's always been done in a very measured way. It's been very focused on competitive bid procurement. And yes, I will comment, the cheapest electricity on the system today is utility scale solar. I mean, you're seeing bid prices 2.5 cents to produce power at this point, and that's because of the economies of scale that you see, and in particular, this happens in South Georgia. I am from South Georgia, and Georgia is very attractive. I will comment that we are a great solar state. The only state that has done it in the Southeast that does not have mandates is the state of Florida, and they actually are even a better solar state than Georgia is. But Georgia has done it the right way. We also have, because we have a lot of rain here, our solar panels are able to take advantage of rainstorms, which you don't see as much in the southwestern United States. So our association has wind, we have solar, we are working in the hydrogen markets as well. We support all renewable resources, but solar has been the one that has fit the state of Georgia as well as it has. So I just want to stand here to tell you that the members of my association 100% support what you're trying to approach here, and we just want you to do this in a way where we take into account the salvage value that you have at the end of the life of the project, allow the private landowners to enter into these lease agreements with our developers to negotiate those so that we have a process in place and we can prepare for those days when we are having to decommission. And those covenants that are that are in our agreements, our members are mandating or they're stating that they're going to return that land to its previous use if they do decommission. And that is what we have to do, our members, when they compete in the Georgia Power RFPs, and we certainly want to be that type of partner to our utilities in the state as we develop these resources. With that, we appreciate you taking a very measured approach here and for your interest in this topic, and we want to be a resource and a supportive partner during that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions for Brad? All right, thanks for being here. This is the last person I see signed up on the list, Taylor Schindler with the Southern Renewable Energy Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and I'll be brief because I am the last one. I am Taylor Schindler here on behalf of the Southern Renewable Energy Association. We're an industry-led group of renewable developers, many of whom are already doing business in this state, made significant investments, and are creating jobs in power. And frankly, we're here just to thank you for your leadership on this, Chairman Kelly and Chairman Parsons, members of the committee. Excuse me. And also just want to commit our resources and time throughout this process. I know that these minimal standards are, as we continue the economic development trajectory, we certainly want to make sure we're good stewards of the environment and the land that we're using, and also keeping the ratepayer number one in mind. And so appreciate all the work y'all are doing, and continue to be a resource, and we'll make sure we're in touch as well. Also be remiss, Judd Turner is also working on behalf of us. Judd was in South Georgia today on some water issues, but he'll also be working with us this session as well. So happy to yield for any questions, but appreciate y'all's time.
Any questions for Taylor? Thank you for being here. That concludes the speakers that we have lined up for today. I will just say for the benefit of everyone here, because I don't think it can be found online, but the substitute that we've been discussing today, we have plenty of copies back here. I'll set those here at the front of the table so anyone can get them. I know that we have some time between now and the second week of January, but I'd like to continue the discussion. Would love to have input from anyone as we move towards January. Hopefully at the beginning of session, this can be something that we take up towards the beginning, as Chairman Parsons will give us that opportunity. So thank y'all for being here today, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. This meeting's adjourned.